Good morning, everyone. I'm Reverend Carrie Ives, and I'm thrilled to be here with you today, virtually at Tree of Life Interfaith Temple, to lead us all in worship. I look forward to the time when we can be together in person. And I also appreciate how being on Zoom allows our friends and family to join us from many states around the country, including dear Deanne, who's out in California early in the morning there. I'd like to welcome all of us in with these words written by our presiding minister, Reverend Linda Goodman. Welcome, whoever you are and wherever you are on your spiritual journey, you are welcome here. You are welcome to bring your beliefs and traditions, your identity, your story, and the wisdom of your years. All of who you are is welcome. All of who you are is sacred. In our presence, may you always seek your truth in freedom, speak your truth in love, and live your truth through service. And through all your days and nights in our presence, may you experience love. At this time, I'd like to light a candle to start our service, and I invite any of you who have candles at home to join me. In my Unitarian Universalist tradition, we start our worship by lighting a chalice, which is what this is. Mine has all sorts of symbols around it to show all the interfaith religious beliefs. And it's in this spirit that I light this candle today. There you go. Got it. There has to be one issue in this service, right? If there's only one, I'm doing well. New candle, into the thing, into the chalice. We're good to go. All right. That'd be the hardest part this morning. Each of our chalices, each of our candles is unique, just as each of us is unique. Different homes, different families, different jobs, different hobbies, different lives. Still, we come together to honor that which is the same in all of us, in all people. Inherent worth and dignity, the divine spark. Please join me in singing along with the hymn, Come Sing a Song With Me. Karen's going to share the screen and the words will be on the screen with the video.
Sing a song with me that I might know you.
time, I'd like to invite everyone to join me in a responsive reading here on the screen. I'll read the regular print, and Deb Ellen will lead all of you in the italics print. This is called This Is Where We Are, and they are the words of Martin Luther King Jr. adapted. This is where we are.
Where do we go from here?
First, we must massively assert our dignity and worth.
We must stand up amidst a system that still oppresses and develop an unassailable and majestic sense of values.
What is needed is a realization that power without love is reckless and abusive.
And that love without power is sentimental and anemic.
Power at its best is love implementing the demands of justice.
And justice at its best is power correcting everything that stands up against love.
And this is what we must see as we move on. Power without love is reckless and abusive. Love without power is sentimental and anemic. Neither extreme works. I think during this time, more than ever, finding a healthy balance in our lives is really important. Generally, people are pretty aware of balancing for physical health, balancing the healthy foods, fruits and vegetables, good protein, watching the calories, with the sometimes foods, the really yummy ones, cakes and pies and cookies and donuts and whoopie pies right. And then getting some exercise to balance out all the sometimes foods. And usually people are aware of balancing for emotional health. In this time, that might mean watching your media consumption, watching or reading enough news that you know what's going on in the world, and attempting to balance that with watching maybe some comedy, some old sitcoms, some silly movies that help you forget the world for a while. There's also a spiritual balance for us to try to find and try to maintain. What counts as spiritual is different for each person and different within faith traditions. Some would look at balancing the secular world with the spiritual world, like balancing your day-to-day job with going to weekly worship services. We can have, and our temple acknowledges, a broader view of spirituality than just weekly worship. It really can encompass many aspects of our day-to-day living. Any action undertaken with an intention toward contemplation or connection to something wider than oneself can be spiritual. For ideas of possible spiritual practices, I particularly like the Tree of Contemplative Practices, which was developed by the Center for Contemplative Mind in Society. The online address for the tree is in the notes, which are in the order of service, in that very long order of service that got sent out to people. And I can share the image of it later on, maybe at the end of the service. The Tree of Contemplative Practices helps to demonstrate that spirituality can be individual or communal and can include practices which they split up into 7 different categories. Stillness practices, like centering prayer and insight meditation. Creation process practices, singing, chanting, contemplative art. Generative practices, visualization or metta meditation. Movement practices, like yoga, tai chi, or labyrinth walking. Ritual and cyclical practices, like Shabbat and honoring holidays. Relational practices, like storytelling and deep listening. And practices of activism, like marches, acts of witness, voting, and other social justice work. So it could be that balancing our spiritual health, rather than balancing the secular with the spiritual, looks more like balancing different aspects of spiritual practice with each other. Many of us are pushing on ourselves right now in terms of activism and social justice work. We're fighting for immigrants' rights. We're encouraging senators to not push through a new Supreme Court justice in record time just before an election. We're working on self-education on racial injustice, for which I'll put in a quick plug that the Tree of Life Seekers Book Club will be starting discussion on the book Me and White Supremacy on October 19th. And everyone is welcome and encouraged to join us. I'm going to be leading the discussion on that. You might be trying to deal with your friend from the other side of the country or your next door neighbor who doesn't believe that masks make any difference or that COVID is just a hoax anyway. You could be participating in Black Lives Matter protests and actions, or defund the police or reallocate funding for police activism, just to see in the news how much this work matters and how heartbreaking it is, as we hear the names Rayshard Brooks, Daniel Prude, George Floyd, and of course, Breonna Taylor. And because of all of this, there is also get out the vote efforts and campaigns for particular candidates and issues. It can all be a bit overwhelming. When we steep ourselves in this work, when we focus on the news and the injustice and the horror that is happening around us, we can get lost in a mass of pain. How do we balance the social justice work? What is the balance for bringing the negativity of the world into ourselves? There is a spiritual practice called Tonglen. It's a practice traditionally done by Tibetan Buddhists, in which the meditator breathes in the suffering of the world, sometimes very specific, sometimes broad-based, and then breathes out love, happiness, and joy. I have to admit, I don't have a lot of experience with this practice. And even in brief research around it, I see that the little exposure I have had to it has not taught me well. There is a depth to Tonglen that I have not experienced. But a major question that I have about Tonglen practice is, what happens to the suffering? If I bring it into myself, am I supposed to just sit with it? Am I supposed to be enlightened enough that I can hold all that pain in my heart and just be cool with it? Because I'll be honest with you, that is not what happens to me. I feel all that pain, the hurt, the anxiety, and I don't know how to transform it into love. So I try to ground it out, sending it out through my feet into the earth. And then I use my own reservoir of love to send out the good stuff. All of this is a long way of saying, I don't know Tonglen well enough for it to work for me. It's also to point out that all the suffering that we take in needs somewhere to go. Where does the pain go when we hold the pain that our country is in right now? What can we do with it? I'd like you to sit with that question while Karen shares a video with us. This song is called We Americans, and it is by the Ives brothers. Love in our hearts with the pain and the memory. When I first heard that song, it just grabbed me by the heart and held on. How do we transform the pain and the memory into love? How do we hold the difficulty, the knowledge of what this country has done, has stood by, has created, and does create systemically, and still hold out hope for the future, our hope for what our country can be, our hope for a better life for all of us, our hope that if we vote for the country we want to live in, that our vote will matter. Hope is a tricky thing. Without any of it, we are mired down in the fear and disappointment. With too much hope, we can start to ignore the reality of the world as it is. There's a term you might have heard, spiritual bypassing. It means to lean on spiritual concepts to avoid processing or dealing with the difficulty in your life. The technical definition is the tendency to use spiritual ideas and practices to sidestep or avoid facing unresolved emotional issues, psychological wounds, and unfinished developmental tasks. I think sometimes people who say, well, we don't need to worry about making this world better because there can be no perfect world until we get to heaven. I think they might be doing some form of spiritual bypassing. I think sometimes the people who say, all this turbulence, this uptick in racial injustice, this increase in human rights violations, this is all just a sign that we're evolving into a new time. The pendulum is going to swing and we're going to be in that place of equal rights for all. It's going to happen. I think sometimes they are doing some level of spiritual bypassing. Neither of these ideas are unhealthy in and of themselves. But in the extreme, when holding those beliefs keeps someone from seeing and witnessing and doing their part to change this world, this reality that we're in, well, then they are at least out of balance. They are holding hope in an unhealthy way. We can't eat chocolate cake and pretend that it's healthy because it has eggs and flour. We can't eat boiled Brussels sprouts and dry chicken and pretend that it's delicious. At least most of us wouldn't be able to pull that off. We need to find hope, but we need to find it in a healthy way. We need to hold the discomfort that we're taking in with spiritual activism work and balance it with hope created in a similar spiritual path. We can balance our spiritual activism work by focusing on spiritual practices from the other categories in that tree of contemplative practices to help us refill our tanks. Movement practices like walking the labyrinth or pulling weeds in the garden can allow us to channel the negative energy and send it into the earth. Stillness practices like centering prayer or silence practice can calm our anger and frustration. Creation process practices like chanting or creating music can help us channel our emotions into another form. And generative practices like metta meditation or visualization can create in us a sense of peace and hope for the future of our country and of our world. finding balance spiritually is needed, not just for our spirit, but for our overall health. Sitting in a space of anger, frustration, or disillusionment can impact our emotional and physical health, leading to depression, stress, or even ulcers or heart attacks. It is imperative for our overall health that each of us finds this spiritual balance. To be in a place of witnessing, listening, learning about the struggles going on, working to make the world a safer and better place, feeling that pain and that sorrow. And also feeling grounded in our own sense of peace and holding out the hope that it is possible in this time to make some difference, that the world might be shifted toward love and justice and peace, and that by voting and encouraging others to vote, we can create the country that we want to live in, that we can be proud to live in. Balancing by holding both the pain and the hope together. That is our challenge, and that is my prayer. I invite you to enjoy a musical meditation that Karen will share with us now. Please join me in the spirit of prayer with this reading by Clyde Grubbs and Marjorie Bowens Wheatley. The road of history is long, both full of both hope and disappointment. In times past, there have been wars and rumors of wars, violence and exploitation, hunger and homelessness, and destruction of this earth, your creation. We have become a global village with a growing realization of how fragile this earth is and how interconnected we are to each other and to all creation. We cannot continue to live in the old way. We must make a change, see a new way, a way toward peace with justice and a healthy planet. O great creative spirit, you have given a vision of the good, and we yearn for a new way. But where are we to find the courage to begin this work? We know that a different tomorrow is possible, but how can we build it? We think of the prophets, women and men who voiced unpopular opinions, who made personal sacrifices and sometimes lost their lives for the sake of justice. We think of Isaiah, who called out to let those who are held in captivity go free, to give solace to the poor and homeless. Let us be inspired by all who work to overcome misery, poverty, and exploitation. We think of Harriet Tubman, who called out to people of goodwill to join her on an underground railroad, to lift a dehumanized people from the bondage of slavery to the promise of freedom, even when it meant challenging unjust laws. Let us be inspired by those who are outlaws for freedom. We think of Gandhi, whose belief in soul force, the witness to love's truth, helped to overthrow the oppression of an empire and gave witness to the way of nonviolent action. Let us be inspired to become witnesses for peace. We think of Chief Seattle, who reminded us that we belong to the earth, not the earth to us. Let us be inspired by all those who work for the healing of creation, of Mother Earth and all her creatures. Who are the prophets who inspire you? They may be well known or known only to you, offering personal inspiration, courage, and hope. May they join a great cloud of witnesses to a new way of life, the way of peace and justice, the way of justice lived according to the way of peace, the beloved community. So may it be. Amen. Please join me in singing Amazing Grace.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see.
Our closing words this morning were written by Jim McGaw. When I say go in peace, I don't mean go in mindless oblivion. When I say go in peace, I don't mean go without challenging yourself or others. When I say go in peace, I don't mean go in utter ease and comfort. When I say go in peace, I mean go in peace seeking justice. I mean go in peace committed to equal rights and opportunities for all. When I say go in peace, I mean go in the peace that is created when together we build communities of true solidarity, deep compassion, and fierce, unrelenting love. Go in peace. We have a postlude which you are welcome to sing along with, you're welcome to dance along with, you're welcome to just enjoy.
Only let it shine. You know, everywhere I go, I've got to let it shine, 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 shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere that I go, I say I got to let it shine. Let it shine, 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 shine. All around me, I'm gonna let it shine. All around me, I've got to let it shine, shine, shine.